So, Victor, let's look at some of these primaries. We already talked a little bit about Francesca Hong, who lost to David Crowley, which was a good thing, but I think it was by a very small margin. And I don't know the hope for the GOP in that primary, but you've suggested it's not very good. And then in Minnesota, we have a governor's race and a Senate race that are very important. We might take the Senate. Michelle
I
Tafoya,
like Michelle Tafoya.
yes, is
I
the
remember her when
GOP.
she was a network sideline newscaster,
Yeah.
sportscaster.
And she apparently has a pretty good chance against a hard left candidate, Peggy Flanagan. So that will be a very interesting
It will.
race to watch.
She's an underdog because it's Minnesota. Um, this again, these socialists. The demography of it is the Democratic the Democratic Socialists are 85% white and 70% with a degree. And they are focused in Minneapolis, Washington State, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, Austin, Atlanta, Denver, Chicago, Boston, New York, Washington. They like big city enclaves and urban areas, and they are degreed, but they go to these schools and they run up a couple $100,000 of debt. And then they rent apartments and they pay $4,000 or $5,000 a month for rent. And they love, as a single, the big city dating, going to rock concerts, going to cultural, parties, and getting to know players and shakers and movers. And they're very glib. But given higher education today, and given in particular their degrees in social science, psychology, sociology, public policy, gender studies, race studies, leisure studies, recreation, you name them, they're poorly educated, but they got a very strong sense of self. In other words, they're ignorant and arrogant. So then they get in there and they live there. It's exciting for a couple of years. And they look around and say that I have a friend who I have met at this party. He's a lawyer, a corporate lawyer. Hey, I know a guy who works on Wall Street. Oh, you know what? I just guy and his wife. They're both doctors at Boston General, and they have beautiful homes. And I'm just like them. No, you're not. They made choices that you didn't. But I have $200,000 in debt, and I'd have to get, and houses are $2 million. This is so unfair. I'm a socialist now. Well, you may be a socialist now, but you would like to be a capitalist, and you can't be because of your choices that you've made. And so, just this week, I live in a predominantly, I'll say the last 2 or 3 weeks, I had one person come, and he was an electrician, Mexican American, a master electrician, and he's very expensive to pay. He both works on weekends as an independent contractor, and he works with a salary. And their electricians are very highly paid, and he's living in his house. I had another guy who was just a Hispanic, and he was a master gutter maker. I mean, he made the gutters on the house here. He had a machine to do it. And he was very well paid, and he makes a lot of money. In fact, I won't tell you his name or anything about him, but he wanted to show me his total income. And I would tell you that that income he made was equivalent to a provost or a dean at the CSU or UC system in Fresno County of all places. And then I don't even ask the electrician. And then in addition to that, there's a guy that came out and worked on the pump. I was out there with him and I was talking to him. And my point is, none of them are socialist. None of them are radical. I would say they were all Trump voters because I talked to them. And my point is, they have homes. But you know what? They don't live in San Francisco, and they don't have any student debt, and they're not unemployed. They're turning down jobs. So there is a demand for those type of people who have skills, trade skills, but not a psych major. And then I started to be curious because I always knew that the home ownership rate was 62% of the population lived in their own home. So I looked it up. Had to debate Piers Morgan. So I wanted to check my facts after I did, and I was correct. It's 65%. It's above 62. So when everybody said, "Oh, the socialists are coming because of affordability," and then I looked up the aggregate of inflation rate under Donald Trump, the first year of his second term, and so far it's about 2.8, 2.9 that we know of. It'll get higher because of oil. Under Joe Biden, the average was 5.3. Five, and that was not, and if you looked at what counted, not paper clips, but car insurance, house insurance, food, gas and diesel, price of cars, price of home, they all went up over 21% over his 4 years. So this affordability, the Republicans have been really inept at trying to show everybody that we had this huge COVID spike with the government just handed out money. We had all these low interest rates, and it sparked inflation. And now they expect Donald Trump to lower that. You're never going to lower that 20. It's a big, like a rat and a snake. It's there. And it's making its way through the economy. But my point is that you can't say that. I was on Piers Morgan and I tried to be, he said, well, affordability, you can see why. I said, no, I can't see why they're socialist. I see people working all the time across America that aren't socialist. And they don't, they don't do what these people do. They go out and they look at the job market and they say, do they need sheetrockers? Do they need plumbers? Do they need electricians? Do they need high school whatever it is? And then they say, I want to get married and I want to have children. Can I do that in New York? No. Can I do that in Denver? No. Can I do that in San Francisco? No. Can I do that? I go to Palo Alto, right? And I have colleagues that work at Stanford and they tell me they're hurting because they're younger and they can't buy a house. Well, a 1,500 square foot home is $3 million. Over here in Fresno County, you could buy it in Selma for 220,000. They would never live here. So, yes, it's unaffordable if you have these certain demands. That I have to live in this area and I have to have this type of house and I have to have this type of job. But, you know, and another guy came, he's looking at my foundation and he's very happy. He's doing very well. But I thought, wow, he has no student debt and I said, what do you do every day? I crawl into crawl spaces. And I said, well, I know my crawl space. And he said, Victor, you have 3 feet of crawl space. You have a lot of ducting, but that's heaven to where I go under.